That was a good conversation.
Good topic. Good conversation. I know, exactly. Exactly. We're preparing for a fun show in the future.
Absolutely,
So a fun monthly meetup with Matthias. I mean, they're all fun, but we're going to go extra. We're going to go all out. We're going to go all out. So if you can't tell, it's going to be our monthly meetup with Matthias this morning.
Exactly.
So we're very excited about that. And I'm here with Xavier. Got a lot to talk about. We'll do some real estate, some Charlottesville, some finance. We have a lot of things that we can.
Yeah, there's always a lot to talk
chat about.
The
today.
hour seems to fly.
It really
At first
does.
you say, wait, what are we going to talk about in a whole hour? And then all of a sudden it's like you got like 3 minutes left. I said, wait, we didn't cover all the things
We didn't cover
wanted to
everything. Exactly. So it's going to be a good one. So I hope everyone is prepared. In a
nice hot coffee, right? Café con
yeah,
leche.
today might be the iced café con leche day.
Really.
I know it's debatable. We've debated whether or not that's legitimate.
Yeah.
But if it was ever going to be legitimate, today would
be one of those
a
days.
good day to get your iced café con leche and get into a comfortable spot, preferably with
Let me ask you a
conditioning.
question. Have you ever seen anywhere that sells iced café con leche?
No, I've seen iced coffee.
Yeah, no, I understand, but café.
But I feel like if you don't have iced coffee, you might as well. It has to be better if it's an iced café con leche.
Right,
I mean, why
but I'm
would
saying
it would only
café
taste
con
better
leche
if
is
you
right. It's different than just
They add,
coffee.
well, you add milk and sugar.
Yeah,
With the caramelized.
No, yeah,
But I feel
exactly.
like, think about it. Iced coffee. Let's face it. I'm not really a huge iced coffee fan.
I know
iced
you're not,
coffee. It's
yes.
coffee with ice cubes in it, right? So it's kind of like a
and
watered
then
down
don't
coffee.
they put some cream in there? Or you can.
Well, you can put cream and sugar, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. When you add cream and sugar to iced coffee, it tastes a lot better.
Yeah.
So imagine adding a lot of milk and caramelized sugar to this iced coffee. It's got to be even better than
so
iced
the only
coffee.
issue I always had is like when you put ice, it
Yeah.
dilutes the flavors of everything, obviously,
Yeah.
right? So I wonder in a café con leche. I mean, the beautiful thing about café con leche is that it's that silky, really tasty. Kind of covers your whole
And
tongue.
you've kind of watered
and you
it
enjoy
down a
it.
little bit.
Then you water it down. It's like.
But I mean,
don't
if
know.
you're willing to have the watered down coffee,
No, I don't like watered anything.
that's
but
what I'm saying. But I'm
just
comparing
saying,
it to the
it's-
iced coffee,
yeah.
right? I'm not saying iced
There's
café
gotta
con
be a
leche.
way where-
Iced café con leche has to be not as good as café con leche.
Yeah.
But it has to be better than iced coffee.
Oh, of course.
It's gotta be.
You and I agree on that.
It's got to
no doubt
be.
about
So
it.
that's what I'm thinking. If you don't have iced coffee, Judah's like, I'm done with these guys. It's enough coffee. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today y Mañana. I'm Alex. This is Xavier. We're very excited to have you joining us on a beautiful, if hot, morning
Listen,
here
I
in
just
Charlottesville,
want
Virginia.
I'd like to say something. I mean, Judah cut us off when we discussed the café con leche. I think we should just continue on this conversation. Café con leche.
Judah was
really.
like, I can't
don't
take
think
this anymore.
I
I
don't think
can't
that
take
was fair.
What did it do? Talk about iced coffee all day. So, but it's Cuban. We're
Exactly.
Cubans. That's what happens. You talk about coffee, sugar, and rum. So, I mean, it's
Yeah, what better than that?
common conversations. So,
Arroz con leche sometimes. Anyway.
but it's wonderful to have everyone here this morning joining us. We're very excited for today's show. It's going to be our monthly meetup with Matthias. It's going to be some real estate. It's going to be some finance. It's going to be some Charlottesville, some beautiful fall weather. There's always
laughter too somewhere.
There's
in there.
always laughter and a great time. So we are excited for that. Of course, we didn't get to it, but Xavier would recommend that you do
You
a couple
like and
things.
share, and if you want, you can even subscribe.
Exactly.
I think that's the nicest introduction I've ever received here on the
Oh,
show.
what other way can we do it?
More flowery today.
Oh, I love it's worthy. You are worthy of the flowery. So, of course, always big thanks to Judah behind the camera, the I Love Seville Network set, Mergent Financial Services, and our awesome partners, Matthias Yon, Credit Serious Insurance, Forward Adelante. And thank you, our fantastic viewer. Already I see people tuning in. Jerry Miller watching the show this morning. It's always fun when we
where-
see the
so where is
live
Jerry?
audience.
What do you mean
He's
he's
our
watching?
live.
Where is
He's
he?
our live audience. Every once in a while, you hear him in the
So
background.
who's that?
Nicholas Erpe tuning in this morning. Dr. Elizabeth Erpe wishing a good morning to her favorite podcast host. I wonder who that might be. And be sure to send us any questions, comments. We'll read them out loud. And so I always love jumping right in, especially when we're lucky enough to have Matthias open.
Well, absolutely,
our
yes,
show.
yes.
So we're happy to welcome this morning the wonderful Matthias John from Matthias John Realty. Thanks for joining us this morning.
morning.
As always.
Excited to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back. So what's new? I mean, it's been a little bit since, I know maybe even since Xavier's been on with you. What's new in the Matthias family household? What's new for the summer?
Well, let's see. We're wrapping up the summer. Is it safe to say that
is.
we are entering
It
into the
is.
fall?
Yeah, I
End
think
of August. So I guess this is a
feels
summer
so.
wrap up, right? Things are good. Our baby is growing fast, and she is cuter every day.
Yep.
I feel like my family and I, we are different in how we spent the summer because we were here the entire time, except back in June. But July, August, we were here, and everyone I know has left for at least once. And I think you guys, you just got back from a vacation as well. And that pretty much sums up my experience. Everyone was traveling. A lot of people that I work with in real estate have been traveling. And it also is indicative of how the market was, right? It always slows down in the summer. I like to think because it's too hot, but the reality is school children are off. This is the time to go on vacation, and many people did that. And now everyone's coming back to Charlottesville. Was it just last week that UVA started back again?
Yes,
it was.
exactly.
And then
Tuesday.
this Wednesday, Albemarle school started. So safe to say the summer is
back,
slowly over.
Yeah, back to normal.
There is a certain, it's happened to us a couple times when we've been in Charlottesville for the summer, and you don't go off. There is kind of this sense of quiet, that everything goes to a crawl, and driving down University Avenue, sometimes you'd be like, wow, there's no one on University
That's right,
Avenue.
yeah.
How does this happen? Because you normally used to
It doesn't
take
take
you
20 minutes across, yeah.
You're in 10 minutes, you're downtown. It's just, it's a different, relaxed feel, and it probably gives you a feeling of what the town might have been like before the university was as large as it is now.
My parents came to visit from Germany back in, I think it was in April, and they always like to walk the grounds. They like the architecture, and obviously there's a lot of history to observe and learn about. And so every time they visit, they're there several days of their stay, walking the grounds. And they asked me, why do you never come with us? Don't you like, the architecture at UVA? And I told them what people told me when I moved here 10 years ago. It says, unless students are on vacation, you don't go to the campus. You don't go to the corner because it's, it's kind of the student thing. You don't mingle. And I'm not sure if I know the exact reason for that. There are probably a number of factors. But I feel like most residents kind of stick to that tradition, right?
Well, I just think it's busy, right? So in other words, so the idea of now you are driving towards where the university is, more traffic, difficult to find parking. You get out, if you want to go have coffee or someplace, it's
always
packed with
crowded,
students.
yeah.
And I mean, listen, there's pros and cons. I mean, the summer, they're gone, it's less traffic. But I always get the feeling that when students come back, the energy in Charlottesville just increases, algorithmically. I mean, it's just tremendously. So
But also the frustration and traffic, right?
well, I was trying not to say that. I mean,
I'm here for the uncomfortable truth.
Well, and it's inevitable, right? I feel like even being here, after the summer ends and you start going maybe to areas you didn't go to for a little bit, you're like, oh wow, they changed that. That changed. How did I miss that happen?
Yeah.
You go back to UVA, there's 2 new buildings that I'm like, wow,
That's true.
I left, and when I left, there was a crane last summer, and now there's a whole building there.
Exactly.
And you're on Hydraulic Road, and you're like, oh, they built a roundabout. When did that happen? You feel like you lose track of what's happening just to the slow, lazy summer that happens.
Speaking of which, isn't that positive news.
Which one?
The hydraulic road traffic pattern that changed.
They finally have a
the
roundabout there.
roundabout. Everyone, no matter where you looked on social media, everyone was predicting just negative news and accidents left and right. And so far, it's been actually relieving the traffic. At least that's my experience. And
I may have a different opinion on that one.
So let's
see-
make
well, you've
this.
experienced-
But no, but
Some
I'm not sure we want to talk about traffic on this show.
Well,
Let's talk about traffic the entire episode. Why do you think it's not good?
So I guess my feeling is, I mean, I've experienced roundabouts, here, but mostly in Europe, right? And they're very, very useful. Now, Europeans are very familiar with roundabouts. I mean, and we're talking about major traffic, where the roundabouts are huge. The way they did this one, I mean, if you're coming out off the 250, going west on North 250, right, coming west on the 250 and going off hydraulic, you are now down to one lane. There used to be two lanes.
Is one
That
entrance
traffic
lane.
is backing up on the 250 enormously, because now you have one lane that only makes a right on the first right. Then there's another one lane that makes the next right only. And then there's the next right that goes into where Whole Foods is. And that one laner really almost just goes straight. So my feeling is that lane is never really gets into the roundabout. It just kind of meander straight through. People that have to get into that roundabout, if that traffic just keeps flowing, it's a real tough job, in my opinion, right?
I think my suspicion is that is an accident reduction technique rather than a traffic reduction
I
technique.
think that's the actual reason.
Because
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
used
but
to
I mean,
happen...
what
so I don't
did it do?
remember,
I mean,
what
I'm not
used to
sure it did
happen-
anything. How
No,
did it
what used to
alleviate
happen
traffic?
where I would see the accidents all the time is because there were two lanes. When people would make a left at that light to go up towards the Whole Foods onto hydraulic, right? They have the right of way on both lanes.
Right.
How many times would you find the people that had
That
blown
wouldn't
past
yield- yeah,
the
they
yield
didn't yield.
sign and they would just hit each other? Because I would always see accidents at the left turn and the yield. And now I think what's happening is they're saying if you are making a right, you have no choice but to yield because you won't be in that lane. You have to get into the left lane. So yeah, you've got more traffic, but I don't think that was done to relieve traffic. Because I'm not sure you can
in that
without
case,
like
yeah.
making
Well, I mean,
three
if
lanes.
it was done to relieve traffic, I don't think it did its job.
I think that part
I
was
just-
done to reduce
I guess my
accidents.
feeling is that's not a genuine roundabout. That's a change in traffic pattern at hydraulic.
Now I understand why you were hesitant to talk about traffic. You are passionate about
Go
it.
down the rabbit hole quickly there. But I mean, I think that's going to become more and more the future because I know they want to do that out by Crozet. And the Midwest has a lot
More
of states in the
roundabouts, yeah.
Midwest
Yeah.
have now gone completely roundabout because apparently it's much more helpful in many situations over a traffic light. So I think
Absolutely.
if you're in Charlottesville, you had best get used to it because I think you're going to see more of
the
that.
one by where like what's the name of that road that kind of goes to where Seville Aquatics is, and then you make a right to Lowe's, and it keeps
Yeah,
going.
it's a roundabout.
Right, I'm saying that one down there by where Kmart is, that's a genuine good roundabout, right? Because that's a place where, there used to be either stop signs or traffic lights, and it's like, what's the point?
On
You just
Berkma
get-
Drive.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Berkma Drive, that's right. There's a few of those on there, which I think are very, very useful,
Yeah.
because you never
it
literally
works.
have to, you slow down, but you don't have to stop, because there's just not enough traffic there to cause you to stop at a whatever.
At a stop sign or a
Stop
stoplight.
sign, yeah. I was gonna say
Yeah.
light, but it's sign, yeah.
But out of curiosity, do you ever have people that make it like come to you like, Matthias, I don't want to be near Charlottesville because of traffic? I mean, do people have a kind of distorted view? I mean, we come from New York, so this traffic is not a huge deal for us. But like,
Perspective really matters here. If you go to Charlesville Reddit, you will get the impression that Charlesville traffic is the worst in the country. But if you have ever been in Texas on a 12-lane highway or just traveling up to Northern Virginia, D.C.,
Yeah.
I think Charlottesville is pretty
good.
comfortable and organized compared.
Absolutely.
So again, perspective.
It
I've
really is.
never had a client complain about traffic in Charlottesville. No, compared to where they're from. No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
But of course, if you're used to traffic in Scottsville, then Charlottesville seems like the big congested city, right?
Well, it also depends, I think, which side of Charlottesville you want to live. Because we'll have some clients that basically, if they're up 29, they're like, yeah, I'm only coming to Charlottesville. If they're up in Greene or north there, they're like, oh yeah, I'm only coming to Charlottesville, once a week because I don't want to deal with that. Right? Because they're used to.
Yeah, I think it's in the morning, right?
Yeah,
where
it's
you
in
get
the
most
morning.
of the traffic.
They don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, listen, like Matthias says, everything is relative
perspective.
because it's perspective. I mean, obviously, since we're from New York, I mean, we recognize that you can be in a block, meaning, one street to another street and be there 20 minutes, right? And it's like, that's traffic because you haven't even moved. And you say, uh-oh, right here,
They're
that
moving. Never
that
happens.
doesn't happen. I mean, there's some traffic, but you get to places pretty quickly.
Exactly. Even in the fall, as people start coming back.
And we've talked about this before. I mean, I forget who I was talking to when we went on vacation. We met some people, and I said the beautiful thing about Charlottesville is that you have a city. Obviously, the college, has a big impact on our quality of life. Whether you think it's positive or negative, that's your choice. But I think, from a certain respect, it's positive because, like I said, you have sports, you have concerts, you have a lot of things going on here that creates. You have restaurants, you have the downtown. Within 10 minutes, you're in the country. I mean, you drive out, west. You're literally in the country. I mean, there's trees, mountains everywhere, right? And the scenery is beautiful. So you live in a place where there's things for you to do, and yeah, maybe a little congested, but 10 minutes, 15 minutes away. I mean, people in big cities like New York, for example, you got to drive 2 hours in traffic to get out of there and see what we see in 10 minutes away. Yeah. So it's a beautiful place to live for that reason.
Absolutely.
And that reminds me of that endless discussion about affordability. In general, in the U.S., big problem, of course. We all know the headlines, but in Charlottesville in particular is considered to be a relatively expensive place to live, right, and purchase a home, etc. But then, wouldn't that also mean that steady stream of people moving here should subside at some point? The reality is that is not the case. People voluntarily, not necessarily job-related, decide to move here because it's a wonderful area to live and raise a family or to retire, whatever the motivation is. And so the home prices keep going up, and yet people decide to move here because of what they feel attracted to in the area. And so that shows me that it's not always about affordability. Some people also prioritize, you know. Maybe they sacrifice certain things in order to be able to live in Charlottesville or in the surrounding area. And I'm the first to acknowledge, yes, affordability is a big problem, especially here in Virginia's second most expensive area. However, there's a reason, and it's not all UVA, it's also the natural beauty of the area, just like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's location. I mean, you're always going to have those challenges in a beautiful place where people are willing to say, I'm willing to pay more to get a smaller house.
Yeah.
Because I want to be close to mountains. It's the reason why why is the coast always, you look at the map US, almost everyone lives on the coast, and it's the most expensive place to live. And you could sit there and say, well, why don't you just go live smack in the middle of Nebraska? It's cheap. And people are like, well, I don't want to have a
I don't see the ocean from there.
Well, people are like, I would rather have a less affordable house on the coast than have a 7,000 square foot mansion in the middle of Nebraska. Yeah. Because it's just a preference of where people choose to live.
And in an ideal world, you would get all the things you aspire, right? The square footage that you need and the extra space in the basement in the desired area of your choice. But the reality is a lot of people sacrifice one or two of those things in order to make it work here. And that shows me that, that the appeal is stronger for some people than the reality of prices. And now, this conversation we are having is obviously on a very high and comfortable level. There are also those that move here because the ideal job is waiting here for them, or whatever the motivation is. And for many people, Charlottesville, living in Charlottesville
That's a
is
challenge.
simply not affordable, and that's why we have so many areas with new developments within this 30-minute driving distance, right? I mean,
Yeah.
all those reasons are related.
Exactly. They're connected.
Well, it's funny because and we all know this. Whenever obviously, I see tons of research come through our desk on many different topics, including real estate, and I always look at it, and in a way, sometimes I just poo-poo it because what you have to realize, and you know this as well as everybody even here, real estate is local. The idea that they give you national standard, real estate this, real estate that, and it's like that's not how it works. I mean, you could see there's a real estate slowdown, and you sit there and you go, yeah, but I live in Charlottesville, and Charlottesville is still hot, right? Or Charlottesville is still growing. So real estate is really so localized that you have to figure out, what's happening in your area. And as you mentioned, right, the appeal of this area continues to be, very strong, and therefore, if that's the case, and the demand continues to be larger than the supply, then prices is just, they're going to go up, or, they're just not going to go down. Let's put it this way.
Well, and we were trying to talk before the show, which I wanted to touch on with you, Matthias, is that there are also, it depends a lot on the time frame in which you're looking at something. And we could sit here and look at the fall, in which you've got now short-term people, maybe buyers looking at making short-term decisions, saying, do I wait a little, where are interest rates going? But then there's fall 2024 through fall 2025. There's a year outlook, which may look very different than an outlook over the next 3 months.
Yeah, it's this constant forth and back of evaluating those pros and cons. Do I wait until next year, maybe the spring, because I will have more choices on the market, more inventory? But the home prices have increased by then, because we know they will, just for sake of having slightly better rate. Is it worth the wait? And others argue, no, it's not worth the wait. I'd rather pay a little bit more right now to the bank, as uncomfortable as it sounds, and take advantage of slightly lower home prices. And slightly lower, that's relative again, because again, we're living in the second most expensive area in Virginia, right? But yeah, it all, and I feel like I've said this so many times on this show, it really depends on your circumstances.
It does.
There's
Always.
no one answer, but it makes sense to really talk to someone. As you said, it's highly localized, so sometimes it's helpful to ignore the big headlines that are aiming on things happening on the national level and look at Charlottesville in particular, or the surrounding area. I think it was last week, this big Forbes magazine headline, when will home prices be affordable again, right? And that's on everyone's mind. And what is affordable? Can you, as financial advisors, please define what is affordable to me?
I'd love to be able to do that.
I think we all
But like
agree.
you said,
Yeah.
it's for each person.
Right. I was going to say
You
again
look at
what you
someone's
just mentioned
numbers.
before.
I mean, when someone comes in and you're doing a financial plan, the answer to whether or not they'll be like, can I afford to buy a house? And the answer is like, well, here's your income. Here's what it would cost you. It's affordable for you or no. But then the next guy walks in, and well, he can afford your house, but you're not him,
Right.
or vice versa. So it's just, it really is very
That's
much
right.
about what someone can afford. And I think you made a good point that sometimes you need to be careful about the major headlines, because you could sit here and say nationally, right, okay, I think interest rates are going to come down, so I'm going to wait. And I'll get a cheaper mortgage. But if the price goes up in the meantime, as we've talked before, you can refinance a mortgage at a lower rate. You can't refinance your house at a lower price. You can't go back 5 years later and say, well, now I'm going to buy this house all over again at a lower price. That's not reversible.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you need to weigh. I think people see in their minds like, okay, an interest rate going from 6.5 to 4 to 5.5, right, saves me this much money. But opportunity cost is harder to measure. but the price potentially going from where it is today to where it might be in 3 months, I have a harder time, people have a hard time envisioning what is that going to cost me, because it's not something you can immediately calculate because you don't know what it's going to be in 3 months.
And the interesting part is that you can do those numbers, right? So you can say, well, so today's interest rate is 6.5. If I think rates are going down 1% at 5.5, at this price, this is what the difference would be, and that's what I can afford. And so the question then is, well, if the prices go up, how much do they have to go up before you're back to that 6.5 and say, am I willing to wait because a price is going to go up 10%, 5%, whatever, and you can make that decision, but at least you have an educated, guess that you can make.
I was working with a client who purchased a home. He moved here from Louisiana, and he was not happy about the home prices. And he had a very interesting take, kind of funny actually, and it worked for him. And in no way I'm suggesting that this is what people should do, just as a disclaimer. He told me that he thinks that house that he was interested in is probably overpriced by about 30%. Those were his words.
Right.
And he then continued and told me, but I'm going to buy it anyway, because I looked at the area and how it develops over the years, and it's going to be even more overpriced in 5 years when I'm going to sell it again. So it doesn't really matter. I just want to jump in right now. And again, this is not the strategy people should go with, but it worked for him. And
Well, I like
that's
the-
a little bit of truth to it.
I like the wording, though. He didn't say this is the market value. He says it's overpriced by 30 and it's going to be overpriced by 40 or 50. It's like, really? Maybe it's just where the market is.
But
Well,
the
it's like-
perspective is if he's coming from Indiana or the Midwest, home prices are very different there. So they're coming here. If you're coming from there, you're like, oh man, this is overpriced, but it's going to be overpriced again in the future, so I might as well do it. If you're coming from New York City, Manhattan, you're like, oh, this is cheap.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of, I remember, and this is probably about 10 years ago, this big bond guru, right? He had predicted where rates are going, right? And the following year, they went literally opposite of what he said, right? And they asked him at the end, he says, well, the market was wrong. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not sure the market's wrong. I mean, it's like the market's huge and you're just one person, right? But it's just funny how it's just people, have this perception. It's like it's overvalued. It's like, is it overvalued or is that where the market is here, Maybe overvalued compared to where you are. I mean, if you live in a particular place and say, that house where I live is 30% cheaper, that may be the case, but that's the difference.
I mean, that's kind of the role you play if you think about it, Matthias, because it's known behavioral science, right? That people value higher that which they own, and they devalue in their mind that which they don't own.
That's true.
So you're trying to help them recognize what the actual value may be so that they can make a more informed decision.
Mm-hmm. When I work with someone wanting to sell their home, that's always what comes up. Let's keep it objective, is what I say. But it's hard. It's hard for someone who has emotional connection to the house and all the improvements they did to have a very different value understanding. Right?
Yeah, look how beautiful this is. It's like, well, somebody else would come in and say, that's not quite that nice, right? It's without any doubt. You always, when it's your home, and especially if you built your home, right, then you assume this is a palace. This is beautiful. Everything is perfect here. And somebody else comes in, it's like, not sure this is what I want. It's like, well, how's that possible? So that your job is the difficult one because, especially if you are representing the seller too, right? You have to find ways where you can kind of maneuver the other person. You don't want to insult the house, and you got to sell it.
Little anecdote. I'm working with someone who wanted to build a home in the mountains here in the Blue Ridge, right off the Parkway, and it took a long time, to sit down with the architect and then find the actual builder, and now it's completed. Yesterday it got completed, and today in the morning we took the sunrise photographs with it. That's where I'm coming from, actually. It's all very exciting. It's a stunning property, nice views. But again, we were in the situation where we have to give it a value, right? And then based on the value, we we define the asking price to go on the market with. And of course, the owner's opinion of the value is very high. But it's not often the case, but I actually agreed with them because I observed the construction and I saw the finished product, and I'm just, it's stunning. It really is. So the suggestion was to get an appraisal, to have someone with authority give it a value, and just wait what he says. And it confirmed the value or the price opinion of the owner and mine as well. So it's not always just completely speculation.
Right.
Right? And it's just fun to see and positive to see when it aligns.
Yeah.
Right? And the facts
sometimes
align.
you do have a good sense. Would you say in general, just out of curiosity, in general, does new construction sometimes have a better handle on what the value may be than an existing home that's been around for a while because there may be emotional connections, there's been changes made, whereas new construction, you can add up a little bit what went into the house?
So I want to say that it's more based on facts because you can very closely look at material, labor. The builder remembers exactly the price he paid for the lot. You can calculate exactly by looking at the numbers the price of the development, the access road, infrastructure, retention pond, all those fun things, and all those are being factored into the price. So the answer is yes. It is a more logical, more factual price opinion, and therefore, yes, it's more on an objective level. It is true. It is easier.
Less emotion that factors into.
Yeah, and if you compare it to a house built in the 1930s, so many factors that go into the to the pricing strategy. It's more complicated. Sure.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that. I mean, think about it when they build, townhouses or individual homes, right? I mean, the contractor has a profit margin that he knows he needs to hit. And of course, it's basically, this is all my cost of material and labor. I need to make this amount of money, right?
Yeah.
And so to a certain respect, that's the only wiggle room is his profit margin, right? Everything else is like, this is what the market bears because of what it costs. Right?
Didn't want to say it that way because there's a lot of hate going towards builders, and we need builders to build because we need more housing. But you're absolutely right. It's pretty much always the same margin that they incorporate. So you can it's simple math, subtract that, and then look at all the cost factors, and most of the time it really matches up.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. No, I mean, there's a role for everything, especially because, I mean, so a lot of times when existing houses are hard to come by, as they have been these past few years, you need something else to fill the supply, or otherwise the demand is even more out of whack than supply, and your prices are only going to go higher.
Yeah.
You need both ends.
And as we were talking about the forecast for the fall market and leading up into 2025, that is actually a little bit of positive news. The prediction is that the price for new construction homes will go down because we will see more inventory of new construction compared to existing homes. So overall, the tendency, of course, as we know, year over year, home prices go up, but that trend might look a little bit more optimistic for new construction
Right.
as we see more of those coming on the market. And that's why we need to value and work with those builders we have in the area that operate in all price ranges, building homes inside and outside of Charlottesville, and that is very important as the area grows and more people move here, and the lack of inventory is on affordable housing, frankly, such a problem, and continues to be a problem. We see too many mansions and too little affordable housing. But again, who am I to repeat what we hear every day in the news, right?
Well, we can't change the market, but do do you find sometimes that you have to, as people maybe are new to the area or they've reached out to you and they're maybe encountering this, like you've heard, I think there's probably a difference between hearing that Charlottesville is not affordable and then actually going to buy a house and realizing, oh man, it doesn't look very affordable for me personally. Do you find sometimes that it's a matter of counseling people? How do you try to navigate with them if maybe they do need to wait for their personal circumstances or it's taking longer than expected? How do you try to work with them? Because sometimes it's a patience game, but how do you kind of help to avoid the discouragement?
Well, it goes back to perspective, I think. Generally, the advice that I have is not to just wait until your circumstances change. That rarely happens if you already live here, right? Then the prices are what they are.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to be worse next year, unless you expect, that you downsize or whatever the factors are. Then it might make sense. So it's really about finding a solution that still works. For example, are you willing to commute 20 to 30 minutes each morning? That is the reality. That is my reality.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I'm a good example then that I can mention. Where can you prioritize? I don't want to say sacrifice, but what are your priorities? And sometimes an honest conversation, not necessarily only with me, but among the family, between husband and wife and the children, can lead to a solution. And all of a sudden it turns out that the children wanted to be surrounded by nature or have a little bit of a bigger yard, and the parents understand maybe we can move to a different county and still be at work in 15 minutes each day.
Right.
And that's just an example. But yeah, sometimes there are tough conversations, and it most of the time the factor that leads to that uncomfortable conversation is obviously the price. Yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah. Which I think sometimes people with home, because it's such an emotional decision, feel like it's different. But it's something if you think about it, people do every day. When we're looking at people's budgets and their expenses, we sit there and say, well, you can't control your income. Or you can't magically assume that your income's going to increase. And you can't control inflation. You can't control the price level. What you then all you really have left to adjust is, what do I do with the income that is given to me at the price level that things cost? And you prioritize. You realize, okay, what is more valuable to me? What is less valuable to me? And I think people do this unconsciously all the time. I don't buy this. I buy that instead. I don't eat this. I eat that instead. But I think with a home, sometimes it's so emotional, people forget to do that.
Yeah.
And you're kind of helping them walk through the process of, okay, what are the things that are actually most important to me, rather than saying, okay, I want everything.
Right.
But what is most valuable, and maybe that yard is more valuable than a 10-minute commute. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe I'm willing to take a 0.3 acre property because I want a 15-minute commute and I don't want to drive 25 minutes.
And I guess the challenge there is that, when you buy small things, right, you can change them, you can, say, hey, I did the wrong thing. But when it comes to a house,
It's a big
the issue,
decision.
and the problem is that sometimes you make a decision thinking, this is, let's say, I'm willing to travel another 20 minutes, to downtown or wherever you move, or wherever you're working, for the extra backyard, right? And then after like a year of every day doing it, you sit there and go, was it worth it, right?
Yeah.
And this is really, it's now that 20 minutes becoming 23 minutes, right? Because I didn't think of this, I didn't think of that. And so that's the issue. Is like by that time, one thing is saying, yes, that's a great decision, but unfortunately then reality kicks in, is that you have to do it, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing, you could be, I'm 5 minutes away, but then every day is like you go, it's like the kids, it's like no place for them to play, no backyard, no anything. So that decision is
such a big
always
one.
a difficult one.
It's a hard one.
So.
And when we have those conversations, I often find myself in a situation where I have to remind my clients that I'm not their financial advisor and I can't guide them on those
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
What I can do is ask questions.
Yeah.
And my experience shows me that oftentimes brings the solution closer, just
Okay.
by
Yeah.
encouraging to ask those uncomfortable questions.
Yeah.
You're helping them find the answer instead of, in a way, telling them the answer.
Well, if something is outside of my expertise,
Yeah.
yes, and then I often connect them to someone who can. We have loan officers, we have financial advisors that can work with them.
And
Makes
like you
perfect
said, it's
sense.
it's behavioral sometimes, right? So in
Yeah.
other words, you know what the question is, you just never want to ask it, right? It's like, and then if somebody brings it up, it's like, okay, it's out there. Now we have to.
I have to think about
we
it.
have to think about it.
I have
Yeah.
to think about it now.
You know.
You know, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. And see, I always it's just so it's nice to talk and kind of bring that out into the open that's an expectation people can have, and how important and helpful it is to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree.
You know, and things do. Like you said, things change, things pick up. There's some hope on the horizon. It's not, things don't always get worse over time. There's ebbs and flows to everything.
Ebbs and flows to everything. Yeah. So there are a few predictions that that make us optimistic about the fall, and of course the fall is typically the second most important season for real estate in every year after spring, and we are obviously hopeful that we will see more inventory on the market. I think now that people are back home and school and college starts, I think a lot of buyers will come out of their caves
their
again, give us a call, and they will evaluate what they can afford, and they will look at the rates. And fortunately, we have seen a slight drop in
Yeah.
rates,
Yeah,
and
we have.
maybe we see even more of that in the near future. All those are signs that the economy will pick up, and real estate as well. But again, we are all in the same situation, right? We struggle to make those predictions.
Yep. Nobody has the crystal
No, we don't.
ball.
If
we don't
we
struggle.
could-
We can make the predictions, but we don't want to because we know, like, we may be wrong, and therefore, why bother?
But then we can say that the market was wrong.
Yeah, right.
There
Right.
you go. Exactly.
I got to remember that. I wasn't wrong. The market was wrong.
Market was wrong. Well, that's a good note, I think, to close it out on. But it's been, Matthias, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
As always.
As always. As
Love
always.
has
having you
been.
on.
And I will be here in a month,
Yep.
Looking forward to it.
and let's see how the market has changed then.
Exactly. No, but it's going to be exciting. I'm excited to have you back each month in the fall to kind of see what's developing and see whether the market
And that
is
I can
wrong or
predict.
not.
The market, I bet you, changes a little bit.
There you go. Safe prediction. Safe position.
And then we know the market was wrong.
There, exactly.
See you
Matthias,
guys.
Good to see you.
Thank you,
Good to
Matthias.
see you. A couple of shout outs out to people watching this morning. Clay Smith, thanks for tuning in. Ale Jose is watching. Jim Ross, Chris Keenan, Medel Coradin watching this morning. Monica Miller from Montana joining us from this morning. Thanks to all our wonderful guests. We love having you all tune in from across the country for our monthly meetup with Matthias. Love it.
Imagine Montana, right? I mean, real estate there versus here.
Which
I
must be a
mean,
totally
it
different
must
animal.
be completely.
A
yeah.
totally different animal. That's for sure.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, even there, right? It's we talk about expectations, right? Apparently, a lot of people moved there after watching like the show Yellowstone
Yes.
because they're like, oh, it's beautiful, the weather's great, and because then they see the winter, and it's like, oh, that's not too bad of a winter, right? And then you find out from people who live there, yeah, they filmed that in the fall. They filmed the winter scenes for Yellowstone,
fall.
not in the actual winter. So then they move there, and a year later, they're like, what the heck? What do you mean it's like 8 to 10 feet of snow, it's negative 40 in the winter? That's not what happened on Yellowstone. That's not what Kevin Costner went through. You know, so then 2 years later, they're gone. And so it's like, I can't take this. That's not what I expected. You know, so that's life.
That's a
life.
good point. That's a good point.
Have to
Yeah.
think about that, you know.
Uh,
And just, you know, I mean, and navigating the real estate market is in many ways like, it's different because it's such a big decision, but anyway, the stock market and the markets out there are similar, that you can't predict them.
Right.
You can claim the market was wrong. You can't know what's going to happen. But that doesn't mean there aren't things you can think about and steps you can take to kind of position yourself to be able to make the best of what is out there, whether the market's going up or whether it's going down. So I think people always know the challenges of when the market goes down.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, everything's worth less. But I think sometimes we have the challenge of, okay, the market went up and maybe I'm not in a retirement account. Maybe my account's taxable. Now what? Because you're sitting there saying, I have gains. How do I get my money and not pay taxes?
Right. Yeah.
Because you're going to be hit with taxes.
Exactly.
And you can't, that's not a bad situation. You
No.
can't predict it. But there are things you can do to kind of think about it and prepare for it in a way.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that I know we always work on is this concept of tax loss harvesting, right? And essentially what tax loss harvesting is that you take a look at a portfolio, because let's be honest, if you have a diversified portfolio, all right, and let's just make it simple. So let's say you go out there and you buy 100 stocks, right? Because you want to diversify and there's a number and you like to pick stocks. Well, there's a high probability that not every single one of those stocks is up. There could be some stocks that just didn't do well for whatever reason. So those stocks may have a loss, right? So the concept is, if they have a loss, then what you want to do is sell those stocks, right? And now you have a loss in your account. You can now go and find some stocks that have gains in your account, right? And sell those so that you balance it out. So let's say you have a $3,000 loss, you can now sell something that has a $3,000 gain, right? And you don't have to pay taxes, right? Because they wash each other out, right? And I mean, there's other rules, short-term, long-term, et cetera, but they wash each other out. The thing that's important is that you eventually, right, and we've seen this like a million times, right? There are stocks that they go up, they do very, very well, and you sit there and go like, I can't sell it because I don't want to pay the capital gains tax. And then 3 years later, the stock came down, and now it's where it was when you first bought it. And you go, I had a chance, but I didn't because I was afraid to pay the capital gains.
To save 20%, I lost the entire gain.
Exactly. So there are ways where, and the issue is that, tax loss harvesting is something that should really be a focus when you have a taxable account, not a retirement account, but a taxable account, is keep an eye on that, because there's going to be opportunities. You just have to stay on top of that and say, am I now willing to do this, right? And second of all, if you have, let's say, your tax losses happen to be $6,000, but you only want to take $3,000 of gains. Now you have $3,000 of capital of losses that you have. Well, those can be adjusted versus your income, right? And of course, I always say, talk to your tax guy about this. But again, there's an advantage there. So as you said, I mean, when you buy a portfolio, the goal is for have nothing go down. But that's not reality. There are times where, and I talked about this with, when I was with Michael about, I guess maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. You take a look at the S&P 500, even this year.
Not
right?
everything's up.
Not every single stock in the S&P 500 is up. I mean, so at that point, I think the stock market was up about like 16%, and yet there was a good number of issues that were down. And part of it was because, the Magnificent Seven was up so high, right, that it was hiding the fact that there were quite a few number of stocks in there are losses. So the point being is that, there are ways, second of all, there are ways to create portfolios, right, that really mimic whatever you are trying to achieve, right? And the important thing is always, what is the client's goals? I mean, is this money there because you're going to use it for 3 years, in 2 years, 1 year, you need liquidity? Is it a 10-year horizon? That's important. But once you figure that out, right, you can construct a portfolio that mimics any market out there, whether it be the Russell 3000, S&P 500, whatever, right, in such a way that allows you really to eventually find ways to tax loss harvest, right?
And because it is one thing that people have to keep in mind is you do have to do it strategically.
Right.
Because you have one major risk with tax loss harvesting, which is that when particularly with individual stocks, right? If you're selling a stock to realize its gain, or to realize its gain and its loss, right? You sell these two stocks, one in a loss, one in a gain. You can't go and buy back the same 2 stocks tomorrow.
Well, on the gain you can. No, that's
On the day you can,
Yes,
but on the
yeah,
loss,
on the
you
loss,
can't,
that's the important one.
You can't go back and buy that stock again tomorrow.
Right.
Because if you do, it's called a wash sale, and the IRS says no, you don't get to realize the loss because you bought the same stock the next day. You've got to wait 30 days to do that. So the major risk with tax loss harvesting is if the price of that stock changes dramatically in the 30 days.
Correct.
You sell something, let's say the stock in question is a stock you want in your portfolio. Let's say you first started investing, a year ago, and you bought some stock, a major stock like a Disney or an Amazon, right? And it's down. And you're like, oh, let me take the loss. And I'll just buy it back in 30 days. Well, it could take off in 30 days, and now you're buying it at a price that's a lot higher than what you sold it at. So that's the risk that you take with tax loss harvesting. So you need to be, you need to be strategic in how you do it. And there are ways to be strategic,
Exactly.
but for people out there, it's not quite as simple, right? The process is simple. The hard part is what happens in the 30 days if that stock is an important part of your portfolio. So, but there are ways to do that in terms of diversification and how you go about this that can kind of mitigate that. And there are ways you can move to maybe areas that can get a similar return, but are not the same stock or the same part of the S&P 500.
Yeah. And I mean, where this was, back in the days used mostly was, wealthy individuals would buy a lot of municipal bonds, right? Mm-hmm. And so with municipal bonds, it was so easy, right? Because you bought a bond that, let's say, was a 10-year maturity, had a 3% interest rate, and it was backed by, the water company, for example, right? And all of a sudden you decide you got a loss. It went from 100 to 95, you got a loss, you sell it. Now you can go buy back any bond that has a 10-year maturity, right? You can't buy that same bond, but any other bond, 10-year maturity, same coupon, right? Or maybe 2 months different in maturity, right? Same company, water company, with similar rate, and you can buy it. So now you're not even taking any risk there because you have the same bond based on your portfolio.
Bonds are so mathematical. You know that bond is not going to have a dramatically different return than the bond you sold.
That's true. Exactly.
It's a different bond, but it's not going to have a different return. Whereas you can't sell Amazon, buy Facebook and say, well, they're going to have the same return over the next 30 days.
Right.
You have no guarantee of that.
That's
they can
right.
have completely different returns.
That's right.
Because they're completely different companies.
But like you said, strategically, there are ways. There are ways in these portfolios to really create, the structure you want, the kind of return profile you're hoping for, and still have the opportunity for tax loss harvesting, almost, on a quarterly, yearly basis, right? And it's something that people should think about and look in their portfolios and say, here's an opportunity to have. Because as we mentioned before, you look at the S&P 500 and top 10 stocks. Once they become the top 10, they've had a great run. The next 10 years, those 10 stocks typically don't do as well, right? So if you have to own those stocks, you're sitting there going, I got a gold mine here. Right, but how do I now begin to diversify my portfolio because it's overweighted in a few stocks? So how do I begin to take some money out of that particular company, right, without having to pay capital gains? So and again, there's ways, right?
Exactly. So there's a lot to think about, and there's ways to do it. Even if you lean heavily towards ETFs, there are ways.
Sure.
To do this with ETFs, you don't need to necessarily have all individual stocks.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there's different strategies that are available to people
And I think that's important. That's really
I think it's something people don't think about as much.
Yeah.
We all know, okay, loss is bad, right? But sometimes we'll run into clients that they're like, I have all these gains. What do I do? How do I get out of this? And I said, all right, relax. There are ways to unwind this strategically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's Xavier, my tip for you.
Because it's one of those things that I think most people, when you have bull markets, people don't think about tax loss harvesting, right? But they still exist, and that's the whole point. They still exist, and you have to make sure that you take advantage of them because bull markets create a lot of capital gains, and you sit there and go, now all of a sudden, in a taxable portfolio, my asset allocation, I'm struggling because I can't really move this fund to that fund to this fund because
it
I have to pay
huge
taxes, right? Yep. So either pay the taxes and say it's still the right choice, or, again, strategically there are ways to create, find losses in portfolio.
And I think that's a key point. I think sometimes people don't make the correct choice that they know to be correct because they're worried about paying taxes. But it is always better to pay 20% on the correct decision than to lose your shirt because you deliberately made the wrong decision.
Exactly.
Because you were afraid of paying 20%, so you lost the whole thing. So you have to keep that in mind. Like, paying taxes is a good problem to have.
That's right.
There are ways to mitigate it, but it's a good problem
That is correct,
to have.
yeah,
It means you've made money in some way. You don't typically get taxed on losses in this country, at least not yet.
Or no income.
Or no income.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why
So,
and it's funny because, how often do we have clients that, it's like, oh, I'm paying all these taxes. And I sit back and said, better to be in that situation. You're paying all these taxes. That means that you're doing well, than coming here and saying, how do I can't afford anything. How do how do you help me, right?
I don't pay taxes, but I have no money.
Yeah, that's a much difficult challenge than
Exactly.
saying, I'm paying all these taxes. In a way, that's good.
yeah,
you know?
exactly. It means you're making some money
Yeah.
somewhere.
I mean, we all hate to pay taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, and I understand that. I mean, I'm in
but
the
like I
same
said,
boat.
at least so for now, you don't typically pay taxes when you're losing money.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Exactly.
Keep in mind there.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
So a couple more shout outs. Miguel saying greetings to the Today Mañana team and Matias. Greetings, Miguel.
Hola,
It's,
Miguel.
Hola, Miguel. Always a pleasure. Rosalia Tordada watching the show this morning. And oh my goodness, so Monica Miller says, we just had their first snow yesterday.
What? In August?
In August.
Oh, Lord.
Wow, so winter is approaching. Winter's coming, fall is coming in Virginia, and winter's coming in Montana.
In Montana.
It's different. So we understand that's the perspective, right? When
Exactly.
you make decisions, it's all right.
Exactly.
Where
Yeah.
am I moving?
Yeah.
If I make a decision like that.
Yeah.
So, try to stay warm. Well, we pray you're staying warm
Absolutely.
inside.
Yeah. Imagine we're kicking up the air conditioner because it's so hot,
And poor Monica's,
they're probably kicking up the heat. It's like, make sure that
know.
heat's working.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, boy.
You know? Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. But so that's what we have for
That's our 3 cents. Is it 2 cents or 3
2
cents? Well,
cents.
inflation
Well,
is
with
3
Matthias
cents.
is 5 cents, but for us it's probably more like 2
No,
cents.
inflation. It
Yeah,
went
it's
from
true,
2
with
cents to
inflation.
3 cents. Now it's 3
now
cents
3
worth.
cents. It's 3 cents worth. But as always, it's a joy to be on.
Same
We
here.
love being on with Matthias. I feel like
Absolutely.
we always learn so much,
Yeah.
but just have good conversations.
Exactly.
Conversations.
Well, he's
that-
he's so laid back and comfortable
And calm.
and calm, and
calm,
we're
yeah.
we're kind of the.
I could
fidgety
definitely see,
agent.
how you could see how working with him must be such a beautiful experience.
Yes.
It's like people, all the buyers and sellers coming in panicked, and Matthias like, calm down. Let's look at this rationally. Let's think this through. Let's
It's
ask
like the
some
prairie,
questions.
right? It's like when he comes in, it's like looking out on the prairie with all the wildflowers growing, no snow.
And I'll be excited to see whatever beautiful photographs come out from the new construction that he filmed. That
Yeah.
they took.
Yeah.
That should be wonderful. So definitely
That'd be
encourage
interesting.
people to
By the Blue Ridge, you said, right?
Yeah, by the Blue Ridge. So Matthias Young Realty, if people are interested in reaching out to him, we stream obviously through his page, but on Facebook you can definitely find him at Matthias Young Realty if you're interested in reaching out to him
Yeah,
and talking to him.
which is a good idea.
Absolutely. So next week, got some more great guests tuning in. We're going to have Najiba from Angel's Afghan Cuisine,
Oh, okay.
as well as Carmel from South Paddock Winery at Whitehall Farm. So we
Wow,
got some
nice,
great
nice.
guests tuning in, joining us next
Food
week.
and
So
wine.
Food and wine. I mean,
A couple of my favorite things
always
to
a
do.
beautiful thing. Food
Eat
and wine.
drink.
Food and wine, as Judah knows, coffee. You know?
Oh, that's right.
So, but we're looking
Do
forward to
we got
that.
any, do we got
next
any
week.
time to finish that conversation? Let me see.
All right, 60 seconds. We'll start again, and suddenly the feed will just turn off. The show ended. The closing credits will just come on in the middle. But wonderful to be here with you.
Same here,
with
Alex,
Matthias.
as always.
Thanks to everyone who tuned in today. Thanks again for your questions, for your comments, for your likes and shares. Always appreciate our great viewers. As we always say, I mean, this show is it's fueled by the people who
Absolutely.
tune in and send us their thoughts and who watch the show. So we really, really appreciate everyone for tuning in this morning. We looked, Rosalia Tordado says, have a good day. Have a wonderful day, Leah. We send you our best.
Absolutely.
Love and hugs as always. And so thank you all for tuning in. Thanks to Judah behind the camera, making us all look good. Thanks to the I Love
I'm not
Seagull
sure he might
Network.
have done that today. I mean, I'm really gonna have to go back and see the show.
See the show, yeah.
Just in
He probably
case.
didn't put the filter today. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm tired of these guys. Everyone can see what they really look like. But, of course, thanks to Matthias Young Realty, Credit Serious Insurance, Forward, Adelante. Thanks to all of you. Stay warm, stay dry, enjoy the beautiful weekend. We look forward to seeing you next week. But until that time, have a wonderful Labor Day, and hasta mañana.